My name's Ava Rains. I'm 27 years old, and the message that ended my family came while I was halfway through a cold sandwich at work. I remember the fluorescent lights humming above my desk like angry wasps, that metallic buzz that gets under your skin when everything else goes quiet. My phone was face down next to my keyboard, vibrating against the cheap laminate like it was trying to claw its way out of something. I should have left it there. God, I should have left it there. But I didn't. I flipped it over and saw his name. Richard, my stepdad, the man who'd been in my life since I was 12, who taught me how to ride a bike and how to lie to myself about what family means. The preview showed just enough to make my stomach drop. We're cutting all ties. Don't. I opened it. Of course I opened it. We're cutting all ties. Don't come around ever again. That's it. 15 years of birthdays and Christmas mornings and awkward family photos, reduced to a text message shorter than most people's grocery lists. No explanation, no context, just a digital execution, clean and final. I stared at those words until they started to blur, until the letters looked like ants crawling across my screen. The sandwich turned to cardboard in my mouth. Around me, the office kept moving, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, people living their normal Tuesday lives while mine imploded in 12 words. Then came the notification sound again. My stepsister, Melissa, sweet Melissa, with her fake Instagram smile and her collection of inspirational quotes she never actually follows. Her response to our father's family-ending announcement? A heart emoji. A fucking heart emoji. Not "what do you mean?" Not "Dad, what's going on?" Not even "are you okay, Ava?" Just a little red heart, floating there like a period at the end of a death sentence. Like she was hearting a meme, instead of watching her family disintegrate. That's when something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped. Like a rubber band pulled too tight for too long. Sitting there in that fluorescent wasteland, staring at that heart emoji, I felt something I'd never felt before in my 27 years of being the family's emotional janitor. Clarity. Crystal clear, razor-sharp clarity that cut through 15 years of manipulation and guilt, and but-were family bullshit like a scalpel through skin. That's when I decided I'd pull my name from every loan they'd ever tied to mine. If you've ever been cut off by the people who were supposed to love you, if you've ever watched someone rewrite your entire relationship with a text message, stay here with me. I want to tell you how I finally learned to stop begging for peace from people who profit from your chaos. But before I could walk away, I found out what they'd done behind my back, what they'd been doing for years while I smiled and signed my name and pretended that love looked like drowning. You have to understand how we got here. How a smart girl with good grades and common sense ends up financially shackled to people who text message her out of existence. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in increments, like hypothermia. You don't notice you're dying until you're too numb to save yourself. I was 12 when Richard married my mother. 12 and desperate for a father figure who wasn't a ghost story my mother told when she'd had too much wine. Richard was everything my biological father wasn't: present, stable, interested in my homework. He showed up to parent-teacher conferences. He remembered my birthday. He taught me to change a tire and balance a checkbook, and how to throw a punch that would actually land. He also taught me early that love means helping even when helping hurts. It started small. It always starts small. When I was 16, he needed me to co-sign for a small business loan. Just temporary, he said. Just until his credit improved. Don't make your mother worry, he'd say, his hand heavy on my shoulder. You're our responsible one. You understand how important this is for the family. I was 16 and stupid, and so hungry for his approval that I would have signed away my kidneys if he'd asked nicely enough. The loan was for $12,000. $12,000 that might as well have been $12 million to a girl who made minimum wage at the local coffee shop. It's just a formality, he assured me, sliding the papers across the kitchen table. My name's the primary. You're just backup. It'll never touch your credit. Lies taste different when they come from people you love. They're sweeter going down, easier to swallow. They sit in your stomach like candy until they start to rot. The business failed within 18 months. The loan became my problem, but Richard had explanations for everything. The economy, bad partners, unexpected expenses. These things happen in business, sweetheart. We'll get it sorted out. He'd ruffle my hair like I was still 12, like I hadn't just watched my credit score crater because of his dream. That should have been my lesson. That should have been my wake-up call. But wounded people make terrible decisions, and I was so wounded by my father's absence that I mistook Richard's attention for love, even when that attention came with price tags. By 18, I'd co-signed for his truck. Just until the dealership processes my paperwork. The paperwork never got processed. By 20, it was a credit card for family emergencies. Emergencies that looked suspiciously like vacation bookings and shopping sprees. By 23, I was the co-signer on their mortgage refinance. You have such good credit, honey. Much better than ours. And it's not like you're responsible for the payments, we just need your name to get the better rate. Your name. That's all they need. Your name on a piece of paper, your signature in blue ink, your promise that you'll pay for their mistakes. They don't need your permission or your understanding or your consent to ruin your life piece by piece. They just need your name. By 25, I was the family's invisible accountant, tracking their payments, monitoring their balances, cleaning up their credit messes while they spent money they didn't have on things they didn't need. But I was the only one who was never paid. Not in money, not in gratitude, not even in basic respect. When bills came in my name for things I'd never bought, I paid them to protect my credit. When Richard's business ventures failed, I absorbed the debt to keep the family afloat. When Melissa wanted a new car but couldn't qualify for financing, guess whose signature went on those papers? Family helps family, they'd say. That's what love looks like. But love never felt like this. Love never felt like drowning while everyone else stayed dry. The worst part wasn't the money. Money, you can earn back. Credit, you can rebuild. The worst part was the gaslighting, the way they made me feel selfish for wanting boundaries, greedy for wanting my own financial independence, cold for suggesting that maybe I shouldn't be responsible for everyone else's choices. You make more money than any of us, my mother would say, her voice thin with hurt. We raised you. We supported you. Is it so wrong to ask for help when we need it? They never asked. They demanded. They guilted. They manipulated. But they never asked. And when I finally said I wanted out, when I finally grew a spine at 26 and said I wouldn't sign anything else, they made sure I looked like the villain. The text message was just the opening shot. I stared at Richard's words. We're cutting all ties. Don't come around ever again, for exactly 47 seconds before my phone exploded. The family group chat, the one I'd been trying to leave for months but kept getting re-added to, lit up like the 4th of July. Richard. Some people forget where they came from. Mom, I can't believe this is happening. Melissa, what did you expect? She's been pulling away for months. Richard, months? Try years. Ever since she got that promotion, she thinks she's better than us. Mom, we gave her everything. How did we raise someone so cold? It wasn't a conversation. It was a courtroom where they'd already picked the verdict. I was guilty of the crime of wanting financial independence, and my sentence was exile. I watched the messages roll in, each one a small knife carefully aimed at the parts of me that still cared. They were good at this, they'd had years of practice. They knew exactly which buttons to push, which wounds to reopen, which fears to exploit. Melissa, remember when she was sweet? When she actually cared about family? Richard, money changes people. Success goes to their head. Mom, I just don't understand how someone can be so selfish. They never said the word money, but every message was about it. Every accusation was really about the fact that I'd started saying no. No to co-signing. No to temporary loans. No to being their personal ATM with a heartbeat. The messages kept coming. Faster now. building momentum like an avalanche. Richard. We opened our home to her, treated her like our own daughter. Mom. She lived here rent-free through college. We never asked for anything back. Melissa. And now she acts like we're strangers, like we never mattered. Rent-free through college. Never asked for anything back. The revisionist history was breathtaking in its audacity. I'd paid rent from the day I turned 18. I'd bought my own groceries, paid for my own car insurance, covered my own tuition through loans and jobs and scholarships. But facts don't matter when you're building a narrative. Richard. Some people bite the hand that feeds them. Mom. I'm embarrassed to call her my daughter. Melissa. At least now we know where we stand. That line hit differently. At least now we know where we stand. Like this whole thing was my choice. Like I was the one who'd sent the text message ending our relationship. Like I was the one rewriting history in real time. I wanted to respond. God, I wanted to respond. I had screenshots. I had bank statements. I had 15 years of receipts showing exactly who had taken what from whom. I could have demolished their narrative with facts, crushed their victim story with data. But I didn't type a single word. Instead, I did something that terrified them more than any argument could have. I stayed silent. The messages kept coming, but they changed tone. The anger became pleading. The accusations became bargaining. Mom. Ava, please. Can't we work this out? Richard. Family forgives. That's what makes us family. Melissa. This is stupid. We're all being stupid. But it was too late. They'd shown me who they really were, not in a moment of anger, but in a coordinated character assassination designed to make me the villain of my own story. They'd revealed that they saw me not as a daughter or sister, but as a resource to be managed. That night, I realized my family didn't want me back. They wanted my credit score. They wanted my signature on their next financial disaster. They wanted my silence while they spent money they didn't have and blamed me for not giving them more. So I did what they didn't expect. I stayed silent. Silence is dangerous. It makes people show their real faces. When you stop reacting to manipulation, when you stop engaging with emotional blackmail, when you stop playing the game by their rules, manipulators panic. They escalate. They reveal their true selves in ways they never intended. I learned this the hard way that night, sitting in my apartment with a bottle of wine and 15 years of financial documents spread across my dining room table, like evidence in a murder trial. Because in a way, that's what it was, the murder of the daughter who believed that love looked like sacrifice. Every signature, every date, every lie written in ink. The business loan from when I was 16. My signature in careful teenage handwriting, believing I was helping my stepfather achieve his dreams. His name was supposed to be primary, but the fine print told a different story. I was listed as equally responsible for the full amount. The truck loan, sold 2 years later when Richard upgraded to a newer model. The loan wasn't transferred. My name stayed on the paperwork for a vehicle I'd never even driven. The credit card for family emergencies. $14,000 in charges for restaurants, clothing, vacation rentals. Not a single emergency in the bunch. When I'd asked about the balance 6 months ago, Richard had looked me in the eye and said, "What credit card?" The mortgage refinance, my signature. Giving them access to the equity in a house where I hadn't lived for 4 years. Equity they'd used to fund Richard's next failed business venture and Melissa's wedding. Each document was a small betrayal, but together they formed a pattern so clear it was like looking at a map of my own destruction. For 15 years they'd used my love against me. They'd weaponized my desire to belong, my fear of abandonment, my desperate need to be the daughter who fixed everything. By midnight I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was their paper trail. I made copies of everything, scanned every document, every bank statement, every email where they'd promised to pay me back next month, or as soon as the business picked up, or when things settled down. I organized it all by date, by amount, by type of manipulation used to get my signature. The total was staggering. Over $180,000 in debt tied to my name. Money I'd never seen, for things I'd never bought, for dreams that were never mine. 18 years of building my credit, destroyed by people who claimed to love me. But the money wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the gaslighting documentation emails, where they'd denied previous conversations, text messages where they'd moved goalposts and rewritten agreements, voicemails where Richard's voice went from grateful to demanding to accusatory depending on what he needed from me that week. When you stop reacting, manipulators panic, and panicked people make mistakes. My phone buzzed around 2 a.m., a text from a number I didn't recognize, but the tone was unmistakably Melissa's. Mom is crying. She hasn't eaten all day. Richard is talking about selling the house. Is this really what you want? To destroy our family over money? Over money. As if I was the one who'd made it about money. As if I was the one who'd spent 15 years treating relationships like financial transactions. I screenshotted the message and added it to my growing collection of evidence. Then I did something that would have been impossible for the old Ava, the people-pleasing daughter who absorbed everyone else's emotions like a sponge. I turned off my phone and went to sleep. 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. No anxiety dreams about missed payments or damaged credit. No night terrors about disappointing people who were never satisfied anyway. Just deep, dreamless sleep like I hadn't experienced in years. When I woke up, my phone showed 37 missed calls and 42 text messages from various family members and flying monkeys they'd recruited to their cause. The tone had shifted overnight from anger to panic. Richard, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Mom, please call me. I don't understand what's happening. Melissa, whatever we did, we can fix it. Just please talk to us. Cousin Sarah, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Your mom called crying. What's going on? This doesn't sound like you. Family friend Janet. Honey, I don't know what this fight is about, but family is everything. Don't let pride destroy what matters most. They were recruiting an army, mobilizing every person in our extended network to pressure me back into compliance. But something had shifted in me during those 8 hours of silence. For the first time in my adult life, I felt calm. I didn't call them back. I didn't explain myself to the flying monkeys. I didn't justify my boundaries to people who had never respected them. Instead, I contacted a lawyer. By morning, they'd gone from guilt to rage. They didn't text this time. They showed up. It was a Thursday morning, and I was getting ready for work when I heard the pounding on my apartment door. Not knocking pounding. The kind of aggressive noise that makes your neighbors peek through their peepholes and consider calling the police. I looked through my own peephole and saw them. Richard and my mother, standing in my hallway like door-to-door salesmen of dysfunction. Richard was holding a manila folder, his jaw set in that way that used to terrify me when I was younger. My mother looked smaller somehow, shrunk by whatever narrative they'd convinced themselves of. I could have pretended I wasn't home. Should have, probably. But 15 years of conditioning is hard to break, and some part of me, the part that still remembered being 12 and grateful, opened the door. We need to talk, Richard said, pushing past me into my living room like he still had the right. Actually, we don't, I replied, but my voice sounded strange to my own ears, stronger than I expected. My mother hovered in the doorway, her eyes already red with tears she'd probably been practicing. Ava, sweetheart, what's happening? Why won't you talk to us? I tried talking. For 15 years. You preferred signing. Richard turned around, his face flushed with the kind of anger that comes from being held accountable for the first time. Don't you dare act like the victim here. We gave you everything. You gave me debt. There's a difference. Families help each other, my mother said, stepping into the apartment. That's what love looks like. No, I said, and the word came out harder than I intended. Love looks like respect. Love looks like honesty. Love looks like not treating your daughter like a credit line with feelings. Richard opened the manila folder, and I saw papers inside, familiar papers with familiar signatures. You think you can just walk away? You think you can abandon your family because you've got some money now? I'm not abandoning anyone. You cut me off, remember? Don't come around ever again. Your words. That was, my mother started, but Richard cut her off. That was anger talking. We were hurt. You've been pulling away for months, acting like you're too good for us. I've been setting boundaries. There's a difference. Boundaries. Richard spat the word like it tasted bad. You mean selfishness. He pulled out one of the papers from the folder, and I recognized my own signature from years ago. You signed these willingly. Nobody forced you. You're right. I signed them willingly. Because I trusted you. Because I thought family meant something different than it apparently does. Family means we forgive, he said, his voice taking on that manipulative tone I knew so well. Family means we forget who paid the bills. Families forgive, I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Families forget who paid the bills. The silence that followed was heavy with years of unspoken truths. My mother looked back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match she didn't understand. The house payment is due next week, she said quietly. We can't make it without me. I finished. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not love, not family. You need another signature, another co-signer, another way to make your problems mine. Richard's mask slipped completely then. You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you. And there it was. The truth. Finally naked and ugly in my living room. Not disappointment or hurt or confusion. Rage at losing control of their personal ATM. I think you should leave, I said. We're not finished here, Richard replied, but his voice had lost its authority. He was used to me backing down, apologizing, finding ways to make peace. He didn't know how to handle this version of me. Yes, we are. We're very finished. My mother started crying, then real tears, not the manipulative kind. Ava, please, I don't understand what we did wrong. That almost broke me. Almost. Because part of me, the daughter part, the 12-year-old part that still remembered needing a family, wanted to comfort her, wanted to explain that she hadn't done anything wrong, that this was about Richard's manipulation and financial abuse. But I couldn't save her anymore. I couldn't save any of them. You chose him over me every time, I said quietly. Every time he asked me to sign something, every time he made me responsible for his failures, every time I tried to set boundaries, you chose his comfort over my well-being. That's what you did wrong. They came holding a folder. Inside were my own signatures, copies I never gave them. They'd been keeping records too, but for different reasons. They kept my trust the way collectors keep receipts. Richard gathered up his papers, his face twisted with the kind of rage that comes from being exposed. You'll regret this. When you're alone and miserable, remember that you chose money over family. I chose myself over abuse. If that looks like choosing money to you, that says more about you than it does about me. They left without another word. Richard storming out like a child who'd been told no, my mother trailing behind him with her head down. I locked the door behind them and leaned against it, my heart pounding like I'd just survived something dangerous, which I realized I had. And when I thought it couldn't get worse, my sister found me. The knock came the next morning, soft this time, almost apologetic. 3 gentle taps that sounded nothing like Richard's aggressive pounding from the day before. I looked through the peephole and saw Melissa standing in my hallway, holding 2 coffee cups, and wearing the expression she'd perfected in childhood, the one that said she was sorry without actually admitting fault. This was worse than Richard's rage or my mother's tears. This was the soft sell, the honey trap, the manipulation wrapped in sisterly love. I opened the door anyway. I brought coffee, she said, holding up one of the cups like a peace offering. That vanilla thing you like. I'm running late for work, I lied. 5 minutes, please, I just want to understand what happened. Her voice was different from the others, softer, more reasonable. Melissa had always been the diplomat in the family, the one who smoothed over conflicts and found compromises. She was also the one who'd sent the heart emoji response to my exile, but somehow I was supposed to forget that. "Come on, Ava, it's me." Against my better judgment, I let her in. She settled onto my couch like she belonged there, like we were still the sisters who'd shared secrets and inside jokes before money poisoned everything between us. "Richard's an ass," she said, taking a careful sip of her coffee. "You know that. But Mom's really struggling. Mom's struggling because she married a financial predator and enabled him for 15 years. That's harsh. That's accurate." Melissa set down her coffee and turned to face me fully. "Look, I get it. I do. You feel taken advantage of. But this scorched earth thing, cutting off the whole family, that's not like you. Maybe the old me is exactly the problem. The old you was kind, generous, someone who cared about family. The old me was a doormat who confused enabling with love." She flinched at that, and for a moment I saw something real in her expression. Fear, maybe, or recognition. "We can fix this," she said, her voice taking on that sweet, reasonable tone that had always been her superpower. "Whatever damage has been done, we can fix it. But not if you shut us out completely." "I didn't shut you out. Richard told me never to come around again." He was angry. People say things when they're angry. People also mean things when they're angry. Melissa leaned forward, and I could see her shifting tactics in real time. "Okay, fine. Richard was wrong. But you've been pulling away for months. You stopped coming to family dinners, stopped answering calls, stopped being present. What were we supposed to think? You were supposed to think that maybe I was tired of being treated like a bank. That's not," she started, then stopped. "Okay, maybe some boundaries got crossed. Maybe we leaned on you too hard. But families work through things. They don't just disappear." There it was. The real reason for her visit, delivered with surgical precision. She wasn't here to apologize or make amends. She was here to negotiate my return to the family ATM system. "What do you need, Melissa?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what do you need? Because this isn't about reconciliation. Richard and Mom already played that card yesterday. You're here for something specific." Her face cycled through expressions: surprise, hurt, calculation before settling on resignation. "The car payment. I'm 3 months behind, and they're talking about repossession." "The car you couldn't qualify for on your own credit?" "Yes." "The car I co-signed for because you promised you could handle the payments?" "Yes." "The car that's apparently about to be repossessed despite your promises?" "It's not my fault," she said, her voice getting defensive. "Jake lost his job, and the wedding costs were more than we expected, and—" "Stop," she stopped. "Just stop with the excuses. You want me to bail you out again. That's why you're here. Just one more time. Just until Jake finds something new. Just one bridge loan, Ava. For old time's sake. That's the thing about bridges. They burn both ways." I stood up, and Melissa's face went through another cycle of expressions. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to walk you to the door." "Ava, please. It's not about the money. It's about family." "No, Melissa. It's about money. It's always been about money. And the really sad part is that you can't even see the difference anymore." She stood too, her diplomatic mask finally slipping. "So that's it? You're just going to let my car get repossessed? Let me destroy my credit? I'm going to let you handle your own responsibilities." "That's cold, Ava. That's really cold. That's healthy." She gathered her purse and the coffee cups, her movements sharp with anger. "You know what? Maybe Richard was right. Maybe success did change you. The sister I grew up with would have helped. The sister you grew up with was drowning. And none of you noticed because you were too busy piling on more weight." She paused at the door, her hand on the knob. When you change your mind, and you will, don't expect us to be waiting with open arms. I won't. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just locked the door, and this time, I kept it locked. But peace doesn't come quiet. It comes tested. The silence started the next day. Not the angry silence of people plotting their next move, but the genuine silence of people who had finally realized their target was out of range. No more calls, no more texts, no more flying monkeys sent to negotiate my return to compliance. For the first time in 15 years, my phone stayed quiet. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like detox, all the withdrawal symptoms of breaking an addiction to toxic people who had become my normal. I changed my passwords first. Every account, every login, every piece of digital access they might have had. Richard had been helping me with my online banking for years, just to make things easier, and I'd been naive enough to trust him with that level of access. No more. I closed the joint accounts they'd talked me into opening for emergencies. I removed myself as a contact from their credit cards and utilities. I updated my mailing address with every financial institution to make sure no more of their bills could accidentally end up in my mailbox. Each action felt like pulling off a bandage, painful but necessary. Silence started to feel like oxygen instead of punishment. I'd forgotten what it was like to check my bank account without anxiety, to open my mail without dread, to answer my phone without calculating whether I had the emotional energy for whatever crisis was waiting on the other end. For the first time in years, my paycheck stayed mine. All of it. Every dollar I'd earned through my own work, my own skill, my own value to my employer, stayed in my account instead of flowing through to their endless stream of financial emergencies. The amount was shocking. I'd been subsidizing their lifestyle to the tune of nearly $2,000 a month without even realizing it. $2,000 a month. $24,000 a year. For 4 years, that meant I'd given them nearly $100,000 of my own money on top of the debt I'd co-signed. Money that could have been my house down payment, my emergency fund, my retirement savings. Money that had disappeared into their black hole of poor decisions and blamed me for being selfish when I finally said no. But the strangest thing about this new silence wasn't the money, it was the breathing room. The space to think without someone else's crisis dominating my mental bandwidth. The ability to make plans without wondering who would need to be rescued from their own choices. I laughed for the first time in months. Actually laughed. Not the polite social laugh I'd perfected for family gatherings, but a real belly laugh at something stupid on TV. The sound was so unfamiliar I almost didn't recognize it as coming from me. I slept through the night, multiple nights in a row. No anxiety dreams about missed payments or angry family members. No 3 a.m. wake-up calls about emergencies that somehow always required my immediate financial intervention. I started saying yes to things: dinner with friends, weekend trips, a pottery class I'd been wanting to take for years but never had time for because I was always managing someone else's drama. Small moments of joy, laughter, breathing, calm mornings with coffee and silence instead of coffee and crisis management. Then the social media posts started. I found out about them through a coworker who meant well but probably should have minded her own business. "Hey," she said, cornering me by the coffee machine. "Isn't your family from around here? I saw something on Facebook." She showed me her phone, and there it was, my mother's Facebook page, turned into a monument to martyrdom. Heartbroken doesn't begin to describe how I'm feeling. When you give everything to raise a child and they turn their back on you for money, you question everything you thought you knew about love. The post had 43 likes and 27 comments. All from people who didn't know the full story but were happy to offer their opinions anyway. "So sorry you're going through this. Money changes people. Stay strong. She'll realize what she lost and come crawling back." Melissa had shared the post with her own commentary. "Some people forget where they came from. Prayers for our family during this difficult time." Richard had been more direct on his own page. 15 years of raising someone else's kid, and this is the thanks you get. Some people have no loyalty, no gratitude, no heart. They couldn't reach me anymore, so they rewrote me, made me the villain in their public narrative, the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her loving family for money. They painted themselves as the victims of my success, my selfishness, my cold heart. The comments sections were a Greek chorus of people who knew nothing about the situation, but felt qualified to judge it anyway. People who'd probably never had their credit destroyed by family members offered their wisdom about forgiveness and gratitude and the importance of family. None of them knew about the co-signed loans or the manipulated credit cards or the 15 years of being treated like a renewable resource. They just saw a sad mother's Facebook post and decided I was the monster. For about 10 minutes, it hurt. The injustice of it, the public character assassination, the way they'd weaponize social media to make themselves look like saints and me like a demon. Then I remembered something my therapist had told me years ago. You can't argue with people who need you to be the villain. They needed me to be the villain because the alternative was acknowledging that they were the problem. They needed me to be greedy and selfish and cold because admitting I was just setting healthy boundaries would require them to examine their own behavior. Let them have their narrative. Let them play victim on social media. Let them collect sympathy from strangers who didn't know any better. I had something better. I had the truth, and I had my freedom. Villains sleep better than victims. They came back one more time, 3 months later. I was coming home from my pottery class, a Tuesday evening ritual that had become one of my favorite parts of the week, when I saw them sitting on the steps outside my apartment building. Not Richard this time, just my mother and Melissa, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen them. They'd brought a cardboard box. "We don't want to fight," my mother said as I approached, her voice thin and shaky. "We just wanted to return some things." The box was full of photographs, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family vacations, 15 years of manufactured memories designed to remind me what I was supposedly throwing away. Pictures of me blowing out candles, opening presents, smiling beside people who had spent years systematically destroying my financial future while calling it love. "We thought you might want these," Melissa said, not quite meeting my eyes. Before we move on, they look different. Thinner, maybe. Definitely older. The stress of managing their finances without their personal credit line was showing in the lines around their eyes, the way their clothes hung loose, the defeated set of their shoulders. "How are you doing?" my mother asked, and for a moment she sounded like the mother I remembered from childhood before Richard, before the manipulation, before love became a transaction. "I'm good," I said, and realized it was true. "I'm really good." "We heard about your promotion," Melissa said quietly. "Congratulations." "Thank you." The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we weren't saying. Finally, my mother spoke again. "I miss you," she said, and her voice cracked on the words. "I know things got complicated, but I miss my daughter." "I miss you too," I said, and that was also true. But missing someone and respecting them are different languages. She nodded like she understood, but I could see in her eyes that she didn't. Not really. She missed the version of me that absorbed their problems, that signed their papers, that made their lives easier at the expense of my own well-being. She missed her daughter the resource, not her daughter the person. "Richard's in therapy," Melissa said suddenly, like this was supposed to be significant. "Anger management. He knows he said some terrible things." "Therapy is good," I replied. "Everyone should try it." "He wants to apologize, to make things right." Making things right would involve taking responsibility for 15 years of financial abuse. Is he ready for that conversation? Melissa's face crumpled slightly. "He's trying, Ava. We're all trying. I'm glad. I really am. But trying to change and actually changing are different things." My mother picked up the box of photographs and held it out to me. "Just take them, please. Even if you never want to see us again, these are still your memories." I looked at the box, at the carefully curated evidence of a family that had never really existed the way the pictures suggested. All those smiles, all those posed moments of happiness, all those celebrations that came with price tags I didn't understand until years later. "Keep them," I said. "Those memories belong to the person I used to be." "You're still that person," my mother said desperately. "You're still our daughter." "No," I said gently. "I'm your former victim. There's a difference." They said they missed me, but missing someone and respecting them are different languages, and they'd never bothered to learn mine. I left the box on the steps outside my building. By morning, the rain had washed the ink away from some of the photographs, blurring faces and dates, and all those carefully constructed moments into something abstract and unrecognizable. And maybe that was enough. Maybe forgiveness didn't always look like reunion. Sometimes it was just closing the door softly instead of slamming it. Sometimes it was saying, "I wish you well," instead of, "I wish you hell." Sometimes it was walking away without anger, without bitterness, without the need to make them understand what they'd done wrong. Forgiveness doesn't always look like reunion. Sometimes it's just closing the door softly. 6 months later, I laughed again without guilt. I was having dinner with friends, real friends, the kind who didn't ask me to co-sign anything or solve their problems or manage their emotions when someone told a story that was genuinely funny. Not manipulative funny or guilt-inducing funny, just funny. I laughed until my sides hurt, until tears ran down my face, until I forgot to check my phone or worry about who might need rescuing from their own choices. I slept without checking my phone that night, and the next night, and the night after that. Months later, peace stopped feeling like the absence of something and started feeling like the presence of everything I'd never allowed myself to want. Quiet mornings, stable finances, relationships based on mutual respect instead of mutual exploitation. I stopped jumping every time my phone buzzed, stopped calculating whether I could afford other people's emergencies, stopped translating "I love you" into "I need something from you." They once called me the glue that held the family together. But glue cracks when it's stretched too far, and I'd been stretched to my breaking point for years without anyone noticing or caring. They broke me to keep their comfort. I healed to keep my soul. The healing wasn't pretty. Therapy, boundaries, learning to say no without explaining myself to death, learning that love without respect is just manipulation with better marketing. Learning that family isn't who you're born to, it's who shows up for you without expecting payment. I built a new family, friends who celebrated my successes instead of resenting them, coworkers who respected my boundaries instead of testing them, a life that belonged to me instead of being leased out to people who confused taking with loving. The old Ava would have felt guilty about being happy while they struggled. The new Ava understood that their struggles were not my responsibility, and my happiness was not their enemy. When they said we're cutting ties, they thought they were punishing me. They thought they were teaching me a lesson about loyalty and gratitude and the importance of family. They never realized they were freeing me. They gave me the one thing I'd never been brave enough to give myself: permission to walk away from people who loved what I could do for them more than who I was without them. That text message, those 12 words that ended everything, was the best gift they ever gave me, because it forced me to choose between their version of love and my own self-respect. And for the first time in my adult life, I chose myself. If you're listening to this, and you've ever had to choose peace over people, if you've ever had to walk away from family who treated you like a resource instead of a person, if you've ever been called selfish for refusing to set yourself on fire to keep others warm, you didn't lose them. You found yourself. You found the person you were before they convinced you that love looked like sacrifice, that family meant submission, that caring required you to disappear piece by piece until nothing was left but your signature on their papers. When they said we're cutting ties, they thought they were punishing me. They never realized they were freeing me. Peace sounds like nothing at first. No crisis calls, no emotional emergencies, No one else's chaos bleeding into your calm. It sounds empty when you're used to the noise of dysfunction. But once you learn to really hear it, peace sounds like everything you never knew you needed. It sounds like your own voice, finally loud enough to hear over everyone else's demands. It sounds like coming home to yourself,